All right, let's dive into one of the trickiest parts of being human, navigating all those difficult emotions that pop up in our relationships. Today, we're going to look at some really practical wisdom, straight from Buddhist thought, to help us understand feelings like grief or frustration. The goal isn't to crush these feelings, but to get curious about them, to kind of understand them from the inside out.
You know, when you read about spiritual paths in books, they always sound so clean, so linear. Step 1, be perfect. Step 2, get super focused. Step 3, bam, enlightenment. It's this perfect ladder. But our actual lives? Our lives look way more like the column on the right. It's messy, it's nonlinear, and you don't get to start at some perfect beginning. You have to start right here, in the middle of all this.
And this is the fundamental reason why. Our minds just don't make logical sense all the time. We can't wait until everything is perfectly calm and organized to start doing the work. The tough emotions, the relationship struggles, they're happening right now. So the practice has to meet us right where we are, in the thick of it.
So this leads us to a really important shift in how we approach this whole thing. Instead of trying to achieve some perfect state before we begin, we start with something that's way more accessible, but maybe, just maybe, a little harder. And that's just raw honesty. Yeah, so the very first quality we need to cultivate isn't perfection. It's just being willing to be honest with ourselves. So when that difficult feeling comes up in a relationship, the first step is to just hit pause and ask, what am I actually feeling right now? No judgment, no trying to explain it away, just a clear, honest look.
Okay, let's get into this next part because honestly, it's a game changer. We're always told that attachment is the big bad wolf in relationships, but what if that word is actually way too broad? Let's take it apart and find out what's really causing the pain. And that brings us to this great question. Is attachment really the problem? I mean, think about it. The feeling of being attached to someone is a mix of a whole bunch of different things. Some of those things are actually really beautiful and healthy, but there's one specific ingredient in that mix that causes almost all the suffering.
And that troublemaker has a name: clinging. This is totally different from just love or affection. Clinging is that specific mental move where we make our happiness conditional. It's the thought, I cannot be okay without this person. That belief, right there, that's the seed where all the suffering grows.
And this is such a critical distinction to make. Look, on one side, you've got all the good stuff, the wholesome parts of a connection. Real affection, gratitude, trust, commitment. These are great. The problem only starts when we mix in the clinging. That's the ingredient that can turn even the best things into a source of pain, because suddenly our happiness feels like it depends entirely on something outside of ourselves. So, the real skill here is learning to spot clinging when it shows up. And it tends to pop up in 3 main disguises in our relationships. If we can recognize them, we can start to work with them. Okay, first, there's clinging to gratification. This is basically getting hooked on the good feelings someone gives you. Second, we cling to the habits, the comfortable routines, the patterns that feel safe. But the third one, this one's the deepest. It's clinging to our own self-identity, where the whole story of who I am gets wrapped up in the relationship.
And this is where so much of the gut-wrenching pain of a breakup comes from. It's when our identity becomes so-and-so's partner. When that relationship changes or ends, it doesn't just feel sad, it feels like we are being erased. And that's what takes a painful situation and turns it into deep, profound suffering.
So, now that we've kind of pinpointed the problem, let's talk about the solution. Because this isn't just about pointing fingers at clinging. It's about building the tools to actually work with it. And what's so cool is that these tools are all about developing your own inner strength.
The very first tool is concentration. And there's this really beautiful way to think about it, as a home for the mind. Imagine creating a stable, quiet place inside yourself, maybe just by focusing on your breath for a few minutes. A place you can go back to rest and recharge, no matter what's going on outside.
And when you have this inner home, something incredible starts to happen. You stop putting so much pressure on other people and your relationships to be your sole source of happiness. You've got another wellspring inside you. And that inner stability gives you the courage to be really, truly honest with yourself and look at those tough emotions without getting totally swept away.
So once you've got that stable home base, you're ready to use the second tool, learning to ask the right questions. This isn't about beating yourself up. It's more like becoming a friendly detective, getting really curious about how your own mind works.
And this whole investigation really comes down to 2 surprisingly powerful questions. First, that honesty question again. What am I actually feeling? And then the second one, the investigation. What's the logic here?
What's the thinking behind this feeling? Now, I know, applying logic to feelings sounds weird, but trust me, our emotions are almost always built on some hidden assumption. Probing that assumption is how you find the why.
And when you start asking these questions, you make this absolutely liberating discovery. A huge amount of the pain you're feeling is being generated by your own mind, based on some old ideas you picked up ages ago that you don't even believe in anymore. It doesn't mean the sadness isn't real, but all the extra layers of suffering we add on top? Turns out, a lot of that is optional.
And this all points to a really empowering truth. We tend to think we're not strong enough to handle our emotional pain, but the capacity for honesty, the ability to build an inner home, the curiosity to ask good questions, these aren't things you have to go out and acquire. You have them. The strength and the tools you need are right here at hand.
So I'll just leave you with this to think about. As you go about your week, looking at your own life, your own relationships, what piece of unnecessary suffering, one that's based on some old story you've been telling yourself, might you be ready to finally get curious about?